Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast, joined as always by Phil Perry. And Phil, conversation this week is certainly swirling around Bill Belichick. I mentioned on early edition Monday the conversations I had after the Indianapolis game and the loss in Germany, that there was a decision reached by the Krafts on Bill Belichick, and there would likely be a parting of the ways at the end of the season. Here's me talking on early edition about this.
When they came out of Germany, conversations I had that week made it very clear that a decision was made and they were going to play out the string, and at the end of the year there would be a parting of the ways for a variety of reasons.
All right, Phil Perry, this is a huge, huge story that we are going to continue to report on as it does develop, because until it's done, it's not done.
No question about it. And listen, I think the question that people may have pop into their minds as they listen to you speak on early edition and as they listen to us on TV, probably the last few weeks, honestly, since that Colts game, Tom, the question might be for fans and for our audience. Did you get the impression, based on the conversations that you mentioned, that the Krafts' decision was a final decision? Or was there any wiggle room if they finish with a flourish and win out the rest of the way? Could ownership change its mind?
Yeah, based on the conversation I had, it felt as if the decision was fairly well sealed. However, if the Patriots finish with a flourish, could things change? It's 28-3 right now. And we know that that's not an insurmountable deficit, but it's very late in the game. And what's the tenor if the Patriots reel off, 4 straight wins, 2 of them against really good teams, Kansas City and Buffalo, the Denver game is ahead of them. But is that enough to wipe away the evidence that led to the feeling after Indianapolis and the game in Germany and all the games prior, the Saints game, the Cowboys game, the Commanders game, the Raiders game, the blowouts, the dysfunction at the quarterback position, which only grew worse in the weeks after the Giants game, the Indy game. You had a week off, then you came back after the Giants and had the Giants, and Mac Jones couldn't make it into the second half. And then you had a shutout against the Chargers. So, it's the nature of the losses and the product on the field and the promises of improvement that the Kraft family made to their season ticket holders that led to that decision at that time. Could a flourish change things? Could Bill Belichick turn on the charisma and the charm and unearth a plan for going forward that at the end of the season, the decision changes? Until it's done, it's not done. And everyone reserves the right to change their mind. And there was no juncture at which I said, okay, final answer. It's your final answer, because you're just not in a position to do that as a reporter, as somebody having a conversation. So from my vantage point, I would say it's not a final decision rendered after the Indianapolis game, but a decision as to which direction they would be going in had been made. And I'm only saying it because I don't know that there's a chance that they could change their minds. Maybe there is no chance that they could change their minds. I simply don't know if there's a chance, but I would feel it's unlikely. How's that?
Well, and you mentioned, the nature of the losses, the nature of the product on the field. I would say that the nature of the roster itself, Tom, has to factor into this, with ownership leaning strongly in one direction, because that is a large body of work.
Yeah.
That is not a few months of bad games. That is a few years of bad roster building. And we obviously know who controls the roster. And so this does not in any way feel like a hasty decision. We've talked on this podcast before about how, people, I think, from afar look at this situation and say, wow, is it really, doesn't Bill get one more year after a bad year? This might be the one more year. And it's gone as bad as any season Bill Belichick's ever been the head coach for has gone.
And it's funny because that is absolutely present, because when you look record-wise at the Patriots product since 2020, you had a reset season. and you won 7 games with Cam Newton as your quarterback and he couldn't throw overhand. It's a pretty remarkable season. You've mentioned in the past, that's coach of the year quality. Other teams would have dropped 2, 3-win teams. But I think the culture has dissipated since 2020. And I think that certainly we've seen the situational and discipline aspects of the Patriots diminish. 2021, they went to the playoffs. They had a very good coaching staff and a good product they put on the field. But by the end of that season, they were taking on water. And then when we look at 8 and 9 from afar, people are like, well, it's just one game under 500. But the level of ineptitude and the level of dysfunction and the way that they started to enter a spiral with the most important position on the field, quarterback, because the care and feeding for the position wasn't there, which, I talked about with Julian Edelman earlier in the week. All of those things kind of trump the record. And that's why they were in a position in this offseason where Robert Kraft was so, downtrodden and dismayed that he had to put out a release after the end of the season and then a season ticket holder letter saying it's going to be better. And then the comments that he made in March about the team competing for the playoffs. So it's all built to that. So again, from afar, you look and you're like, yeah, it hadn't been that bad. I mean, how can they do that? And then up close, it's the nature of the product, especially too, Phil, with what's directly in front of the Patriots. $100 million in cap space, a top 3 pick, obviously, as it would follow, two top 35 picks for this football team. You can't go in the wrong direction. And Bill, too often in the past few years, has veered and said, hold my beer, wait, watch me do this. And it doesn't work out.
The way the roster is set up is it is set up for drastic change this coming off season. Last year to this year, you could understand why you'd want some continuity because there was continuity there on the roster. There were all these free agents that have been signed in the 2021 offseason that remained with the team, that a lot of them are no longer scheduled to be with the team after this year. Mac Jones from last year, this year. Okay, you got a pretty good idea. That's going to be our starting quarterback. So it was a let's run it back, tweak a couple of things. Obviously, one big thing in terms of who was running the offense and see what kinds of improvements we can make. Now, the whole thing looks like it's about to be overhauled. So do you want the head coach, who is already looking like he's finishing up his last year with the team, do you want him starting something fresh when he's going into the last year of his contract? That, for me, combined with the nature of the losses, the product on the field, that flings the window wide open to make a change at head coach and general manager.
So with that drastic change, what would the change be? And that is going to be the conversation that we go through. And I wonder how strongly Bill Belichick will fight to stay here. Would he be resigned? Will he be okay leaving? I think all those questions need to be answered. But now we'll also get a better idea as to what the market is for Bill Belichick as well. But when we look at the climate around the Patriots and what they may do next, Dan Graziano from ESPN, who was working on a Patriots story prior to my Monday comments, he had a story that dropped on Wednesday, and he wrote basically whether it's team owner Robert Kraft's decision to move on, Belichick's decision, a mutual decision. There's a growing belief around the NFL that Bill Belichick will not be coaching the team in 2024. And he went on to say that, based on conversations that he's had with people in the building, it's miserable, it's glum, it's difficult for the team to reconcile how well it's playing on defense with what's going on offense. So Dan basically reiterating what I'm seeing and hearing as well, that the team is heading in a different direction. Dan also mentioned Jerod Mayo and the fact that he is the front runner to be the successor for Bill Belichick. He also mentioned, though, that the Krafts are looking at it as perhaps needing a complete overhaul. Here was Robert in March talking about Jerod Mayo as a possible successor to Bill Belichick. Well, he's definitely a strong candidate to be the heir apparent, using those words. But we have some other good people in our system. So right now we have a good head coach, and we're doing everything we can to support him and make sure we do everything we can to win. Isn't it amazing, Phil, how everything does circle back to that Robert Kraft? Boom, win. We need the wins. Meanwhile, Mayo was asked about the opportunity to be a head coach here in New England earlier this week. Obviously, kind of a dicey situation, uncomfortable situation for him to be put in, but he answered it pretty well.
I only try to control the controllables, and that's out of my control. Hopefully, as you guys all know, one day I want to be a head coach. Where that is, I don't know, but at the same time, I would say I have a lot of love for New England.
So all that in mind, if it's not a fait accompli that Jerod Mayo takes over, is that the way it should be, Phil?
Sure. I think you want to go through a process, right?
No
and
doubt.
so if he's the favorite in your mind as Robert Kraft, as Jonathan Kraft, that's one thing. But to just have it in stone that he's going to be the guy no matter what, that's probably not the right way to approach it. And my guess is that's not how they will approach it. Now, that being said, I have spoken to people who know the Krafts well that do point to their background in business, because they haven't done the whole football transition of power thing all that often in terms of their tenure as owners here in New England. And that obviously for them is a great thing. But the way it was explained to me was, this is a family that runs a number of very successful businesses. When you have a successful business, if you can avoid it, you would like to avoid going from one CEO who's had a lot of success to someone completely different from another corporation who doesn't know really how you operate or how the building has operated for a long time, because there's too much uncertainty there. What you would typically like is for somebody to work under that CEO, you would hope for a long period of time, understand how the business operates, why it had success, what tweaks need to be made, and how they can put their own spin on it for sure. But you'd like to elevate from within. And so if they want to handle it that way, obviously they didn't necessarily do it that way when they went from Parcells to Carroll or Carroll to Belichick, but this might appeal to their business sensibilities to go the Mayo route, along with, added to, all the positive qualities that I'm sure they feel Mayo would bring as the next head coach.
Yeah, I think that Jerod's in a position where he has to have a cogent explanation as to what his plan is. Who's your offensive coordinator going to be? You going to stick with Bill? Can you work with Bill O'Brien? Because he's only been here a year, and we just brought him up here, and we wanted him, and 1 year isn't enough in kind of a lame duck season that didn't work out. So can Jerod work with Bill? How much latitude does Jerod get to say, I can't do that, I want to do this, these are the things I need, is interesting too. Does he get Matt Groh and the personnel department intact, or does he look someplace else? I think the personnel department over the course of time, definitely, certainly post Pioli, so that's 2008 and on, has not worked to kick over rocks and find things that necessarily advance the Patriots as much as they do fit the mold of what the Patriots have been successful with in the past. So when Matt Groh, for instance, or Nick Caserio or Monty Austinford looks at a player, they know Bill has final say, so they're not going to bring him vanilla if he wants heavenly hash and say, try it though, I think you're going to like it. They're going to try and bring him something really close to heavenly hash. So there is a personnel department conversation that has to show that, okay, do they work independent of and gather the best players, or are they trying to fit the system that, whether it be Jerod Mayo or whoever, wants to put in place? It's a balance in that. It's never going to be completely 100% one way or the other. You get the best players and then fit them to your system, or you have a system and then find the players to fit it. Patriots have been more like that, but the Patriots owe it to themselves and their fan base to do everything they can to make sure the right guy is coming in. So I wouldn't be surprised if a search ensues. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, and I think the GM search plays into this as well. If you're a highly coveted general manager on the open market this coming off season, are you going to want to go somewhere where the head coach is already in place and established and the owner is saddling you with that particular individual? You might have zero relationship with the guy. If you've got a market, if you're highly coveted, you might look somewhere else and say, thanks, but no thanks, Kraft family, because I want to go somewhere where I have head coach X who's alongside me. We have a long-standing relationship. We see players the same way. The guy that you want might be great, but I don't have that kind of relationship with him. And I have all these other places that might allow me to bring in my guy. And so how does that maybe limit the Krafts as they look for whoever is going to be running personnel for them next? Would they, again, Tom, would they be inclined to elevate from within? Or do they feel like that system needs to be scrapped? Or they just say the guy who's actually picking the players as the final step is what needs to change? And so whether it's Matt Groh or Elliot Wolf or someone else that's already in the front office that, again, the Krafts would have a relationship with, would they be more comfortable going that route as opposed to bringing someone else in and trying to start this whole thing fresh?
And I've tried to make this point a lot during this season as to the finite amount of time the Krafts have to make this decision and get the train moving in the next direction to the next stop, wherever it's going to be. It's December 14th. They need to go through the process, if they carry through on the decision they made, carry through in the process of extracting Bill Belichick from their team, the greatest coach of all time, in a dignified way. They have to ferret out where he's going to go and what compensation they're going to get. They have to figure out what their next head coaching decision will be, go through that exercise as well if they want to find out if other individuals would be suitable other than what's in the building. They have to figure out their personnel, because you got the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl and the Combine and free agencies looming. So do you go with the personnel department that you have in place and then make decisions next year on it? Who are the assistant coaches? It's a small coaching staff to begin with, because Bill has always kept a small coaching staff. It's December 14th. The season ends January 7th. Everybody's racing around like maniacs off a sinking ship, trying to find the right lifeboat to jump into, coaching wise, etc. So there is definitely a benefit to the Krafts having a plan in place as they go forward, as uncomfortable as it might be that there is so much conversation that a decision has been made. There is upside in a way for them in having that out there. Agree or disagree with the whole thing? I mean, how do you disagree with it? It's kind of locked in, but I just don't think that the urgency folks are understanding, whether it be media or fans. You got to get this stuff done.
Which in some ways, I think benefits Mayo. If he wants to be the next Patriots head coach, you're already in-house. You already have those relationships established. And you talked about wanting to part ways with Bill Belichick in a dignified sort of way. If they're looking to get compensation for him, Tom, does that delay the head coach search, the general manager search at all? Would they want that process delayed if it meant maybe getting a first or a second round pick, which has real value?
Yeah. Or do you just say, screw it, we got to move on. We got to cut clean. I don't care where he goes. I don't care if he coaches the Jets. I don't care if we don't get any picks back. We got to move on.
Which to me isn't what's best for the team.
No,
I know it's probably what's best PR wise, and that might be the cleanest thing and the nicest thing. But if you're looking to help your team the most, is it not, Tom, probably even starting now? To your point, it's December 14th. If you're Robert Kraft, are there conversations happening with other owners saying, hey, if Bill's available, what, would you be willing to part ways with in terms of trade compensation? Nothing? Third, fourth? Okay. Then sure, do the cut ties quick and easy. Go that route. But if there's something better on the table, you got to think long and hard about that. And you do have the advantage of having a guy that you think has head coach potential in your pocket already, whereas other teams, they got to get on their horse too. They got to make these things happen fast as well. So if they want Bill Belichick, it doesn't benefit them to wait a week or 2.5 weeks to make that decision. They've got to move as quickly as they can. So it'll be interesting to see how the Krafts play it, because in some ways the delay, if you want to call it that, the delay, maybe it helps them acquire something that they would like to get in turn for this guy who is under contract, Tom, and is going to be paid by the Krafts in all likelihood a fair sum of money, no matter where he ends up.
As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers Stay Hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, I call them totals, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/NSBO and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. 21 plus and present in Mass. Hope is here. First online real money wager only. $5 pregame moneyline wager required. $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire 7 days after receipt. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling helpline, mass.org, or call 800-327-5050 for 24/7 support. Play it smart from the start. GameSenseMA.com or call 1-800-GAM-1234. As we're talking here today, I'm thinking to myself the position that the successor is in, if it's Bill Belichick, if it's Jerod Mayo, whoever it is. And I think back, there was always a sentiment 25 years ago when this happened more frequently. You don't want to be the guy to follow the guy, because the void after Bill Parcells was so profound. Ray Handley in New York with the Giants found it out. Pete Carroll found it out here, succeeding Bill Parcells. But the important thing in both of those instances was Parcells was a Super Bowl coach when he stepped down in those two instances. Tom Landry, for instance, when he was relieved of duty by the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson came in, the Cowboys went 1-15 in Jimmy Johnson's first year with Troy Aikman, but they quickly rebuilt. But no one was sitting there saying, I wish Tom Landry was here. This guy stinks. And I wonder if being the guy to succeed the guy is lessened if the guy goes 3-14 or 4-13 or whatever the hell the numbers are that add up to 17 this juncture. It used to be easy when I was 16. It's going to take years for me to get the math easy. It's an easier position, but the team, all of this, Phil, I mean, the timeline is such it's a real thing that nobody's looking at. How much stuff has to be done so that the Patriots are competitive in 2024.
And again, to me, if it's a conversation about compensation in a trade, if it's roster conversations about what to do in the here and now to prepare for 2024 and beyond, those have to start happening. And I'm not sure they are, but somebody has to be looking out for the future of the franchise. And I'm not saying that Bill Belichick isn't, because my guess is until he's told otherwise, he's operating as though he's going to be here and under contract for next year. But for example, Tom, and we're going to talk about this a little bit on the next Pats podcast this week. Pop Douglas has had 2 concussions this year. He returned to practice earlier this week. Is it best for the football team for Pop Douglas to play the final month of a season where there are going to be no playoffs at the end and the offense has looked dreadful? And again, he's dealt with this head injury reoccurrence. Or is it best for him, even if he's cleared and eligible to play, to probably sit the rest of the season out and come back in his second year and be healthy and be strong and fully recovered? That, to me, is the kind of decision that is about the foreseeable future. It's not about the here and now. And I don't know who has that in mind outside of the Kraft family right now. And so did they start to help the football operations staff say, you know what, Ramondre Stevenson with the high ankle sprain, he's not on IR yet. We're going to put him on IR because we want him next year. And he started this year slow, maybe because of things he was dealing with or the kind of shape he was in when he got to training camp. But we want to make sure he's good to go next year. So shut it down. We're not going to the playoffs. Those are the kinds of things that Malik Cunningham and finding a 53-man roster spot for him, Tom. The list goes on and on. Right. Who's thinking about the future of the team right now?
Yeah, that's a great point. Relative to Malik Cunningham, for instance, did Bill Belichick say, I'm not going to be here. I don't care if Malik's here or not. He could have elevated him to avoid that. Now, the practice squad claim, once that comes in, I believe that Malik Cunningham has a decision that he can make, right?
He does have a decision. So Bill Belichick said, hey, listen, Malik, we'll sign you to R53. We could let go of Jeremiah Farms or Jermichael Hasty or, anybody at the bottom of our roster. We'll keep you. And maybe they did. Bill Belichick did say in his press conference the other day that they tried to keep him. I don't know to what degree. Did they just offer him an active roster type of salary while keeping him on the practice squad? Did the Ravens maybe make it clear that they want him as a quarterback for the future, whereas the Patriots are leaning more towards receiver? Those are all things that probably would factor in. But he does have the choice. Cunningham does have the choice. He doesn't have to go just because the Ravens say they want him.
It's interesting, and I didn't intend to talk about Malik Cunningham, but it is perhaps indicative, and you can only read into it. What does Bill know, and what are his intentions heading toward 2024? Is he preparing the team and shepherding the team the way he would if he was definitely going to be back? Does he know whether or not he will be back? Has there been a conversation? I don't know that, whether or not there has been. And would Bill Belichick operate differently regardless if he knew what the intentions were or not? All of those are really interesting questions, especially in the wake of the Malik Cunningham decision.
My feeling is he's operating the team the way he's always operated the team. Good season, bad season, middling season. Same way he operated it at this year's trade deadline. He wants to win every game his team is on the field in 2023, whether playoffs are in the picture or not. And so my guess is the reason that Malik Cunningham is on the practice squad and not Jeremiah Farms or Christian Ellis, who they just claimed off of waivers that they've never had in the building before, but he looks like a special teams linebacker, is because those guys have real roles on the 53 now, whereas Malik Cunningham really doesn't. Now, who's the better future bet? What's the bigger lottery ticket? If you hit on Malik Cunningham after a season or two of development, it's clear it's Malik Cunningham.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I think Bill is all about the here and now still, even at 3 wins in mid-December.
However, I would say this: if you're looking at Malik Cunningham and you signed him as an undrafted free agent to a fairly lucrative undrafted free agent contract, and you wanted to bring him in as an athlete, receiver, change-up quarterback, isn't it best for the team to continue to try and develop him? Or did he do what was best for Malik Cunningham in this instance? Because let's do the kid a solid. We're not going to be around to develop him. So, I'm going to do what's best for Malik here in a way that maybe he wouldn't.
Yeah. Do you think that didn't even cross my mind? You think Bill is capable of that?
The kid wants to be a quarterback. We're not going to use him as a quarterback. He's not good enough to be a quarterback. He's not good enough to be a receiver. He's got a shot here. I mean, the Patriots didn't look at him as a quarterback, and yet Bill in the press conference talked about what better fit would there be than the Ravens with Lamar. That's how they do things. That's how they run the ball. They didn't
look at him as a quarterback, Tom, but they also made him the backup quarterback in a must-win game midseason. And he's sort of, in all honesty, he sort of looked like a backup these last couple of weeks since Mac Jones has been benched. The first 2 guys who are sprinting out of the tunnel are Bailey Zappi and Malik Cunningham for quarterback warmups, and Mac Jones is sort of, jogging behind and doesn't even, he barely makes it out before he tails off and heads to the sidelines. So it's interesting to me.
It is.
I think
is Malik Cunningham the canary in the coal mine that indicates where the Patriots' heads are at and Bill Belichick's head is at right now?
It could be, and the reason why I would say that, I just read it differently than you. I look at it as, well, he's not going to play quarterback for us this year, and who knows about next year. And we need Christian Ellis this year, because if we don't have him and Mac Wilson gets hurt, then who do we have? Those are, I think, the conversations that Bill Belichick has. Whereas at quarterback, Malik's probably not our guy. Let's just keep him on the practice squad, and if he gets a better offer somewhere else, he's not. Him getting playing time, real playing time, is probably not in the cards for this year. So we're okay with losing him. Whereas if I'm thinking about the future, if I'm Robert Kraft, I'm not thrilled about it, even if I have no idea if Malik Cunningham can play or not. But I'm looking at it and I'm seeing, corners that are brought in midseason, or linebackers, or defensive linemen, or Vidarian Lowe is still on the roster. And I'm saying, if we end up keeping all of these guys and a few of them hit, wouldn't the most valuable thing be if the quarterback who can run around a little bit actually hits, as opposed to the swing tackle or the special teams linebacker? That's the kind of decision that I wonder if the Crafts wish they were making right now, because their thoughts have to be ahead, whereas I think Bill Belichick is all about win number 4.
Look at this is an unbelievably interesting analogy. The Patriots' 2000 decisions in the quarterback room by Bill Belichick. He had Drew Bledsoe as the starter, who was on a contract but in need of an extension, and Belichick was trying to figure out what he was going to do with an extension. He had John Freeze as the backup. He had Michael Bishop as a changeup quarterback, who was more of a quarterback than Malik Cunningham, having come out of Kansas State. And he had Tom Brady, drafted out of Michigan, all 4 on the active roster. None of them on the practice squad. He was taking up 4 roster spots with quarterbacks because the quarterback position was that important to him in 2000. I got to have all my options. I got to have my starter. I got to have my veteran backup. This changeup kid here, Bishop, I'm not moving on from him yet. I mean, he makes some plays. He's fast. Heisman Trophy almost. And the Brady kid, he just makes a case for him. We're not going to leave him out there. He was just too good in camp and in the offseason. It's amazing. So now all you have is a broken first-round pick, a 2/3 level perhaps backup, and nothing else. And you let your changeup quarterback go. You don't have a veteran. Look at that as evidence of what? Everything in a way.
And you could look at Malik Cunningham's situation and just say, well,
yeah, you couldn't do anything.
He wasn't that good. It's
Right.
not a big deal.
He wasn't Michael Bishop.
They released Trace McSorley too at the beginning of the season, and nobody had a fit. And you might be right, but what I would say is it's not about my evaluation of Malik Cunningham and whether or not I think he could play quarterback. He was the number 2 quarterback in a must-win game. He was a guy that they felt and believed was worthy of development at the position. He was working out at receiver and primarily receiver. But late in the season, Troy Brown said something along the lines of that he's been basically splitting time 50-50 between the quarterback's room and the receiver's room. So they have seen something in Malik Cunningham that is worthy of investment. Time, energy. Dietrich Wise is at the podium the other day saying, we've had a chance to watch this guy in practice. You guys all saw him in that first preseason game. We've had a chance to watch him in practice every day. He's dynamic with the ball in his hands. And we look at each other and we say to ourselves, boy, if he gets another opportunity to do that in a game, he's going to be electrifying, is the word he used. And maybe he just likes the kid and he's talking him up. But the evidence would suggest that they felt as though there was some promise here, and now he's gone for nothing. Yeah.
And again, it's not this conversation, to just circle back. This is not a hand-wringing, oh my God, they missed out on Malik Cunningham. He might be the next Randall Cunningham.
Right.
This is more of, how are the Patriots doing their business in the final stretch of 2023? Is it indicative of what are you going to do? Is it indicative at that position of how far the Patriots' decision-making and roster building has slipped? And again, to reiterate, it was Malik Cunningham's decision. If he wanted to take the Patriots' money and stay on the practice squad, he could have done that as opposed to going on the 53. All right, we have a matchup with Kansas City, and there's an opportunity. There is more opportunity here for Bill Belichick and the Patriots than there is downside. 1:00 Sunday at Gillette. There's been some ugly, ugly games on that field this season. What's this matchup with Kansas City? Does it promise further ugliness, especially with Kansas City coming off 2 straight losses?
I think so. I just look at this Kansas City defense as being very, very good. And I know I said the same thing about the Steelers defense
me too.
a week ago. And I was wrong there. I also would say, the Steelers lost really what drives them defensively, which are their 2 best pass rushers. TJ Watt clearly had a concussion, and that was a joke by the NFL that he was allowed to continue to play in that game. After rewatching that and the TV copy, the guy needed a visor. He's being checked on the sideline. They're looking at his jaw. He's opening up his eyes like he doesn't know where that was incredible that the quote unquote independent neurologist that's supposed to be there on the field watching out for the players in situations exactly like that one didn't step in and allowed him to continue to play, but he clearly wasn't himself. They lost Alex Highsmith too. This defense is good, Tom. They're third. The Kansas City Chiefs are third in points allowed this year. They're 9th in terms of DVOA. They're actually 1 spot ahead of the Patriots in that particular metric. So, Chris Jones is a problem. Trent McDuffie's a nice little slot corner that the Patriots had the opportunity to draft a couple of years ago and instead traded down and took Cole Strange. It's their defense really that is pushing the Chiefs along, and Patrick Mahomes is trying to figure it out with a very unimpressive set of receivers.
Wouldn't surprise me at all if the Patriots keep Kansas City under 20 points. It will surprise me if the Patriots can get past 10. Now we look at the other day and say, well, 14 against the Steelers. Excuse me, 21 against the Steelers. And yeah, 7 of them came on an 11-yard drive. They did that. That was good. But now I think the Chiefs have the opportunity to look at the Steelers game, look at the Chargers game, look at the second half of the Giants game and say, okay, how do we want to attack this team that has one running back? I mean, Juju Smith-Schuster has not played the way he did all year, so you have to be aware that Bailey Zappi can throw it accurately more than 40 yards down the field. That can happen. And sometimes these guys are going to catch it as they didn't do it for Mac. So I would imagine Kansas City is going to be more on alert than they would have been if the Patriots got their asses summarily handed to them by Pittsburgh. All right, Phil, all that said, what do you think we're talking about on Monday? Now, just before we hit that, Chiefs are favored by 8.5. The total is 37. It's brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. What are we talking about?
Can I give you 2 scenarios? The first scenario would be if Bailey Zappi comes crashing back to earth, which my guess is what happens. I believe in the Chiefs defense. They blitz a lot. They play a lot of man coverage. I don't know how the Patriots will have an answer for that, quite frankly. And so I don't think the total is going to be high. And so we're going to be talking about flushing out the quarterback room. But we also will be talking, Tom, about Patriots defense and the guys that you need to keep around for this rebuild moving forward. We're going to be talking about an extension potentially for Christian Barmore, an early one, because he has been so good since about the first month of the season. Jabril Peppers, my anticipation is he'll continue to play well. Jonathan Jones, these guys have been playing really, really good football of late, and I would expect that continues to happen even against Patrick Mahomes. The other direction is if it actually goes well for Bailey Zappi, then we're talking about Bailey Zappi truly as your bridge. And forget about Baker Mayfield, forget about Jacoby Brissett, forget about Ryan Tannehill or any of these free agent quarterbacks you thought you might want to bring in for whoever you might draft early in the spring. No, now that guy is Bailey Zappi. That would be really, really interesting to me if it goes well for him Sunday.
It would be. And my conversation off of that next week will be they all crash down. They all come crashing. Josh Dobbs, Gardner Minshew, Tommy DeVito is the comet streaking across the sky. He is our little Icarus right now. He's going to fly too high and his wings are going to melt. They all do it. And it's going to happen traditionally with all of them. You name me a backup. Well, Brady, but it was different. Name me a backup who rises to, from obscurity. Kurt Warner. I'm just reeling off all of
But these guys talk about like comets shooting through the sky. I mean, those guys are the rare of the rare. Those are Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Yeah. So you're right.
That's why they pop to mind.
It doesn't, for the most part, it doesn't work that way.
So don't go cuckoo if Bailey has a day, because he can have a day. He can throw overhand. Phil, great stuff. Appreciate you. Busy week. It's been a hell of a week. Let's get after it on Sunday and get our eyes on the Patriots and Chiefs. Thank you, everyone.